Good evening. You're watching the news at 7:30 on ATV. I'm Edna.
And I'm Anne-Marie Sim. Here's a look at tonight's headlines.
Government determined not to scrap landfill plans after vote on funding them adjourned.
Executive Councillor Fanny Law says the government is already working on its political reform plans.
At least 6 dead and dozens injured in French rail disaster.
Executive councillors say the government should learn from yesterday's vote by lawmakers to adjourn the debate to fund plans to expand 2 landfills.
Chief Secretary Carrie Lam says the plans won't be tabled again until after summer. And in the meantime, she will visit the people affected to get their views. Arthur Urkeola reports.
For months, the government has been telling people that the clock is ticking down to the day when rubbish being poured into the city's landfills will start overflowing, so something needs to be done about it. Yesterday, lawmakers weren't gripped by the same sense of urgency as officials, and they decided to delay plans to expand the landfills at Tuen Mun and Ta Kwu Ling. The Legislative Council's Finance Committee adjourned yesterday to give officials time to study the plans and consult affected residents. But today, Chief Secretary Carrie Lam said the government is determined not to scrap the plans and will resubmit its request for funding for them after the summer holiday. Lam said she will spend her summer visiting people who live in the affected areas to find out how to reduce the nuisance caused by the enormous rubbish dumps nearby. She added that the government also plans to apply for funding to expand the Chung Kwan O landfill, despite the initial proposal being shelved because of widespread opposition. Executive Councillor Fanny Law said today that the government needs to learn from that experience so it can move forward. She also said the pledges made by the administration to improve Tuen Mun weren't satisfactory.
People in Tuen Mun obviously feel that they have not been respected or consulted. So this is a lesson that the government should take back. And the other lesson, I think, is once we have made some promises, the government must keep them.
But another executive councillor, Bernard Chan, who is also chairman of the Council for Sustainable Development, said the issue of waste management had to be addressed, even if it meant looking at controversial solutions.
We need to find ways to perhaps relieve the tension on the landfill. We probably have to move on with incineration. We have to do incineration, but we also have to start from the source, such as we have to maybe have to charge people for throwing their rubbish. But of course, these are controversial.
Chan didn't say how people could possibly be charged for the amount of rubbish they throw away, but said the council is working on a consultation paper to gauge people's views on the idea. DAB legislator Tammy Chung said because of the adjournment, more concrete plans can be drawn up to address issues such as improving the transportation of waste to the landfills. The government has suggested transporting some rubbish to the Chung Kwan O landfill by boat, although it would still need to be picked up by lorries at the dock and driven to the dump. The Civic Party's Ronnie Tong said the government can use the break to listen to people's concerns and prepare itself better before resubmitting the Chung Kwan O plan. However, he still doesn't think it'll get passed. When asked about the issue, Health Secretary Ko Wing-man said it's necessary for the government to introduce some policies that might not be very popular. He said he also expects some opposition when he puts forward plans to build columbariums in all 18 districts. But it's a long-term issue that needs to be addressed, and the government needs to bond more with the public. Arthur Urkeola, ATV News.
Executive Councillor Fanny Law says the government is already asking people their opinions about universal suffrage, amid accusations by the Pan Democrats that it's not taking the issue seriously.
Law also says some ideas suggested by pro-democracy groups last week don't fit the basic law's requirements. Bo Leung reports.
With no sign of a timetable or blueprint for universal suffrage yet from Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying's administration, pro-democracy lawmakers and their supporters are becoming agitated. But this morning, Executive Councillor Fanny Law tried to calm them down by insisting the government is working on it behind the scenes. Speaking after a radio show this morning, Law said the government is getting views on the topic from different sectors of society, hoping they will think of ideas that will help with the public consultation.
Universal suffrage is one aspect of democratic society. But we also have to look at other conditions, and we should work on all these together.
Law believes that proposals put forward by the Alliance for True Democracy last week are not compatible with the Basic Law. The Alliance, which is made up of 26 pan-democratic lawmakers, academics and some other people, presented 3 ideas on how the city can elect its leader, including voters getting to choose the committee that will nominate the candidates. The group dismissed concerns its reform proposals violate the Basic Law, but Law disagrees. She said political reform is an important issue and hopes a consensus can be reached as soon as possible so that the government can focus on more important issues like improving people's livelihoods. Law's co-worker Bernard Chan believes discussions on political reform should start soon because delaying the subject will cause conflict in society. He thinks the consultation should start within the next 6 months, but stressed that the issue shouldn't drag on as there are more pressing problems to deal with. He added that Hong Kong should be able to choose a leader who is accountable to the people and can also communicate with Beijing. Bolong, ATV News.
The entire police force may have to be deployed next July if the Occupy Central movement goes ahead with its plan to stage a mass sit-in protest in the city's business hub.
But Police Commissioner Andy Zhang says he's confident the force can handle any situation that could arise. Arthur Urkeola reports.
Facing the threat of thousands of people blocking roads in Central next year, hoping it will somehow speed up universal suffrage in the city, the police don't seem too bothered. Police Commissioner Andy Zhang said today that the force is ready to handle the protest action. Zhang told reporters today that if necessary, the entire police force could be deployed next July to deal with the protesters. Organizers of Occupy Central are calling for 10,000 people to stage a sit-in protest in Central if the government fails to come up with proposals for electing the chief executive and legislature that they deem adequate. Zhang also addressed criticism by LegCo's Public Accounts Committee over a shortage of breath testing equipment at police stations, which has led to some drink drivers receiving lighter charges or escaping charges altogether. Zhang explained that not all stations have enough room for the testing equipment, and an application will be made for funding to buy newer models that take up less space. The audit report found 18 out of 42 police stations were not properly equipped to carry out evidential breathalyzer tests, which are conducted after initial roadside tests catch suspected drink drivers. Arthur Urkeola, ATV News.
Sheung residents held a protest this afternoon and accused the government of not doing enough to tackle parallel traders. The protesters said it's still a problem in the area and they don't think things are improving. They complained that there are more people now because traders are splitting up their goods and giving them to various people to take across the border. They want the government to do more to tackle the activity.
A buyer of a unit at Cheung Kong's Apex Horizon Hotel is suing another buyer for compensation. That's after the first buyer sold the unit to the second earlier this year, but Cheung Kong had to cancel the sale of the rooms to avoid getting into trouble with the Securities and Futures Commission. The second buyer now wants to claim back his deposit of $800,000 and 10% of the unit price as compensation, for a total of $1.1 million. The sale triggered controversy because the developer deemed 360 serviced apartments to be commercial property, enabling purchasers to skip the buyer's stamp duty as well as the special stamp duty imposed on residential premises.
A powerful typhoon has battered Taiwan, leaving 1 person dead and at least 30 people injured.
Around 170 flights to and from the island suffered major disruptions today, while Taiwanese authorities struggled to pick up the pieces following the storm. Travellers wanting to fly to Taiwan today faced problems because of Typhoon Sulik. Hong Kong's flagship carrier Cathay Pacific cancelled at least 36 flights, while 19 more were delayed. Passengers on Cathay's subsidiary airline Dragonair also cancelled flights to the island's capital, but it still flew to the city of Kaohsiung. Both airlines warned of disruptions to flights to several mainland cities over the next few days. Sulik weakened enough to lose its super typhoon status yesterday, but Taiwan was still battered by torrential rain and powerful winds. The typhoon was packing winds of 163 kilometers an hour when it made landfall at dawn. The strong winds and heavy rain caused electricity disruptions, a run on food and essential supplies in supermarkets, and uprooted trees and signs in some areas. A police officer was killed by falling bricks in Taipei, but other people suffered mostly light injuries, some from falling trees or being blown off their scooters. Soldiers have been deployed to high-risk areas, and the whole island declared an alert zone by the authorities. Around 8,000 people were evacuated from mountainous villages considered vulnerable to flash flooding. Even though Sulik has moved to the eastern mainland, Taiwan's Weather Bureau said more heavy rain and strong winds would lash the island. Overseas, at least 6 people have been killed and dozens injured after a train derailed in the French capital.
Investigators say it was caused by a faulty track. The train heading from Paris to Limoges in central France derailed and crashed into a station platform. According to France's national rail operator, it was rush hour and the train was filled with families heading off on their summer holidays. There were 370 people on board at the time. 6 of the train's carriages derailed. Rescue workers rushed to the scene to free those trapped in the wreckage. This passenger recounted what happened. For the first 30 minutes, it was completely normal. Everything was going well, he said. But after a while, the train started mounting the rails and I saw the carriage in front of me turning over. Some passengers said the train was traveling fast as it approached the station. Others told the local media that the dead were crushed or electrocuted, and many of those hurt had been hit by flying glass from the train windows. Ambulances and rescue workers rushed to the station. Some of the injured were treated at the scene, but those with serious injuries were flown to hospital. French President François Hollande visited some of the injured. Hollande has promised a thorough investigation into the cause of the tragedy, and he offered his sympathy to the victims' families. It's the worst rail accident since 1988, when a crash in Paris killed 56 people after the train's brakes failed. Still to come on ATV's main news. US slams Russia for allowing whistleblower Edward Snowden to meet rights activists at Moscow airport.
And a 59-year-old Mercedes-Benz breaks new world record with auction price.